Hello, listeners. We're Shedding Light, and I'm Candy.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Susie.
And we're hell-bent on shedding light on unsolved missing persons cases across Canada,
in an attempt to find the missing piece of the puzzle.
What you are about to listen to is the culmination of countless hours of research in an attempt to gather as many facts as possible about the case by reading news articles, online blogs and forums, and by interviewing friends, family, and people involved in the case. We will discuss different theories and possibilities and pick them apart in order to evaluate their likelihood, or better yet, eliminate them. We weren't there. We don't claim to know what happened. We can only try to paint a picture using the resources that we do have. We don't claim anything to be fact that isn't. We don't claim our interviewees' words to be fact. It's their memory. It's their recollection. It's their truth, and it's their opinion. And everybody's entitled to one. That does not mean we necessarily share any of these opinions. And listeners, please remember, everyone, including the suspects, is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Please bear that in mind as we welcome you to Season 3, Episode 1, The Disappearance of Neil McDOUGALL.
Produced in partnership with our friends at Please Bring Me Home and sponsored by Bruce Power. Bruce Power is dedicated to being an active community partner. Their 4,000 plus employees are proud to support community initiatives, volunteering countless hours to make the Lake Huron shoreline a wonderful place to live, work, and play.
Just a heads up that there is some foul language and adult content in here. Listener discretion is advised.
Neil McDOUGALL, a 40-year-old demolition worker and part-time garbage contractor, was reportedly last seen leaving a residence in Ayton, Ontario at about 2 a.m. on October 12, 1985. Family members reported him missing 2 days later. His 1979 GMC pickup was located the following day near the residence where he was last seen. Neil was Caucasian, stood 6 feet tall, weighing 169 pounds with a medium build. He had short, blonde, curly hair and blue eyes and was wearing a blue jacket with his name on it and blue work pants.
Neil lived and worked in Durham, which is located near the base of the Bruce Peninsula, just 23 kilometers north of Ayton. He left work at Durham Three-Way Demolition early on the Friday of his disappearance. A co-worker followed him home. They had a discussion and the man left. After dinner, his wife, Mary Ellen, stated that he told her he was going to talk with a coworker to discuss a Ponzi scheme that he had been involved in and wanted out of. Subsequent investigation revealed that Neil went to Ayton to look for the coworker without success at the Commercial Hotel, also known as Blondie's back in the day. It's now currently known as Trixie's Saloon in Ayton. He left the hotel with someone else and they met up elsewhere with the coworker. Neil then returned to the hotel and left between 1:30 and 1:40 a.m. and was last seen alive at a residence on Edmund Street in Ayton at 2 a.m., October 12, 1985. Authorities strongly suspect foul play due to the fact that Neil's truck was left behind and his bank accounts and credit cards have not been accessed since the day of his disappearance.
Neil and Mary Ellen had been married just 5 months after living together with her 2 youngest children, who were 10 and 13 at the time. Neil had planned to adopt them. She recalls the relationship to be very loving. They didn't argue in the year and a half that they were together, and she holds dear the memories of his romantic and thoughtful gestures. She describes him as a dedicated husband, hardworking, very meticulous, and routine in his habits. He was her soulmate.
When we first started researching for the podcast and doing this in partnership with Please Bring Me Home, both Matthew Knopper and Nick Oldreeve had interviews with Mary Ellen over the phone. So you'll hear Nick in this one clip introducing Mary Ellen as she reads a poem that was written by her son.
So this is from...
It's from my son, Kevin Phillips.
Okay. And this is around the time where he wrote down...
5 years after Neil went missing, 1990.
So he wrote down kind of his feelings about Neil going missing.
Yes. When you lose someone special, it hurts deep down inside. It burns so much you wish you could die. But you must keep on going to keep the memory alive. You loved him so much that you wish he was still here. So you cherish all the things between you that were dear, which are all the memories of old. To you, it's worth more than gold. But with the good memories come the bad, so be bold. It screwed you up one hell of a lot, that you think your life's worth diddly squat. But don't give up trying without a good fight. You never know, the rest of your life may be bright.
Wow.
You know, people don't realize when these loved ones go missing, that they affect you. You just don't get over it. And because we haven't found any bodies, because they're still missing, we've never grieved. We've never had funerals. We've never grieved. We're still grieving 36 years later. You know, you just don't get over it.
So you can hear all the emotion in Mary Ellen's voice.
I know.
She is just suffering.
Well, when I heard that, it just, it rings so many bells for all three of us, because that's exactly the way we've heard it described, that you can't grieve when you don't have answers. And like that term we always use, that state of limbo.
And I mean, just because it's been 35 years, I think often people think 35 years it's not as fresh in our minds. It's not as fresh in our hearts. We'll just forget and move on. And makes me almost want to cry. I'm always a sappy one, for God's sakes, but you could hear her on the edge she was just on the brink of tears, and her voice was shaking. And I mean, talking about something 35 years later, it's still fresh for her, and she's moved on in her life recently, but she still holds that candle for Neil and what a wonderful man he was. And you can hear from the letter that she read from her son, Kevin, how messed up it was for him, how his life was so messed up after his...
Well, her children really bonded with him, and I think they looked up to him, they respected him, and they really, really liked him. And it was devastating for them when he just disappeared into thin air, when they had just begun to make a big, happy family together.
And he was going to adopt them. So that's huge in a child's life. And if you look at them as a father figure, and all of a sudden, it's not like he was sick and he died. It was, that's it.
They were not prepared.
Gone.
No.
And then you may think, oh, he might come back, because you're that age, 10 and 13, you're very impressionable. And you might think, oh, he'll come through the door and to live now forever with nothing.
Well, and children react to things like that so differently. I mean, there was probably a lot of anger. They need to lash out. And I can't even imagine the fallout for poor Mary Ellen, like not just grieving the disappearance and the unknown of her new husband, but to deal with her children and their grieving process.
We don't know the whole story or the background, and really it's none of our business, but obviously they didn't have a father figure if Neil was to be stepping in to adopt them. So imagine them losing their father and then a father figure for the second time. So that's really sad.
And I think it's very important for us to point out to the listeners that Mary Ellen is approaching her 75th birthday. So almost half of her life has been spent wondering. And we can only hope that we can shed some light and find some answers for her.
And you know what gets me is she was in that stage where it's a year and a half. You guys are still in love. Like you still yearn for him to come home, and you're excited in that.
Oh, the honeymoon phase.
Yes. And then you didn't even get to the point where, well, I know I'm at, hi, how you doing? And a nod, it's all that exciting stuff that she was still in. So yeah, it would just,
it's like life
so
just
much.
stops, right? It just stops. The story ends, but it doesn't. So
and her heart's still in that same spot of yearning.
We're appealing to you, the listeners. Please, if you know anything at all, reach out. We want to hear from you.
It's been reported that during the first few weeks and months following Neil's disappearance, that police officers, tracking dogs, volunteers, family and friends, OPP divers, and a helicopter even searched fields, miles of roadside ditches, along with the area river and stream banks, and the Ayton Reservoir. Tips led the searches to cities as far as Ottawa and Calgary, even Florida, but all turned up nothing. He had simply vanished, or so it seemed.
Neil went missing on a Friday night. Well, it wasn't until about a week later, they brought in the helicopters and the divers and the canine units to search. Well, they didn't have the foot search until the Saturday, the week after Neil went missing. And there was about 100 people involved in that foot search looking for him. I searched day and night for months. And I searched, and I bugged the OPPs, and I searched. And I think then after a month or so, the OPP said they had 3 guys come into their office in Mount Forest and say they thought they spotted Neil down in Hamilton. So my friends and I started taking our search to Hamilton. We'd drive down to Hamilton and search around, and we were exhausted because we searched every ditch, we searched every abandoned barn, we searched everywhere. And in fact, this is a story, I don't know how long after this happened when he went missing, but we searched every inch of ditch that went from Ayton to Highway 6 and from Ayton to Highway 4.
So it sounds like Mary Ellen really, really got involved right from day one, totally committed to searching for Neil.
Yeah, right from the get-go.
And had friends involved. People reporting that they saw him down in Hamilton.
So I wonder how valid tips were back then. Like, so you could just walk into a police station and say, I think I saw the guy, and I don't know, must have had some credence, or they wouldn't have been rushing down there to search. But I mean, can you imagine? Like, really, we've spoken to Mary Ellen, and just imagine being in a vehicle, say one of us together, being in a vehicle and looking for our loved one, looking at the side of the road, every single foot of ditch along every highway. Like, just crazy.
Oh yeah, you're looking for any kind of clue, and you don't give up because you don't have them with you. So when do you stop?
We know just from the short time we've been doing this that so many people come forward and they see somebody that resembles the person being looked for. They resemble that person in the slightest way, and they'll report it. And, with social media, things get kiboshed pretty quick. But back then, we saw some guy in Hamilton and the police have to follow up with it. And were they serious? Were they sending them on a wild goose chase? Who were those 3 guys? It'd be interesting to find out, wouldn't it?
Actually would be very interesting. But yeah, we're talking 35 years ago, so much has changed. Mary Ellen had quite a different stance, actually, on how the investigation was handled in the early days.
So you're right. On Saturday, I did phone and report him missing, and the OPP said to me, "Oh, he's probably off on a toot. He'll be back in a few days." Yeah. So then on Sunday, I phoned them again and said, "We found the truck. What do you want us to do with it? Take it home. We don't want it." That truck should have gone to forensics. It never did. When I took the truck home, I got a newspaper and I put all the butts. Oh, I asked the OPPs if they wanted the butts, and they said no, we didn't. So anyway, later on I did. I emptied them into a newspaper and I had them in my kitchen, and the OPPs knew that I had them in my kitchen. That truck stayed in my laneway for a year or two until I sold the truck. The OPPs never came and had a look at it. I took all the butts that were in the truck, I put them in a newspaper in my kitchen, and they knew the butts were in my kitchen. But they never ever did come and have a look at that truck or nothing. And that truck should have gone to forensics. They botched the case so bad, the OPPs. They just never took it seriously. When I went to report him missing, the weekend that he went missing, when I went to report him, I was getting the runaround. I went to the Durham police, and the Durham police said, no, if he went missing in Ayton, then it has to be the OPPs that was in charge of Ayton. And they kept giving me the runaround till it finally went back to the OPPs in Mount Forest at the time.
So Mary Ellen just said that she reported Neil missing on Saturday. And if listeners recall at the beginning of the podcast, we stated just what's been reported all these years to a T, what you'll read in newspapers, what you'll hear, anything that's been reported has always maintained that family reported Neil missing 2 days later. So that's factually incorrect. She did report him missing on the Saturday. And
then she reported his truck showing up on the Sunday, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it
at all.
How crazy is that?
It blows my mind. I know that we're way more advanced these days, but how you would not take a truck in. So my husband's missing. Here's his truck. We don't know how it got here. Nobody knows where he is. It's locked. And here's his truck. Did you want to come and get it? No, you can keep it. Never, ever, ever took it to test for anything, ever. And cigarette butts, that's the first anybody's heard of cigarette butts. So the other odd thing was Mary Ellen told us when she got there, she brought another set of keys, her extra set of keys. The vehicle was very dusty. It was locked. And one thing she said was that Neil never locked his vehicle. They're in Ayton. There's like 200 people. In Durham, where they lived. He just never locked his vehicle. So she said it was unusual that it was locked, first of all. It was very, very dusty. Another thing that he wouldn't have. He was very meticulous.
Well, he was,
right?
Yes, he was very, very meticulous and quite detailed about his vehicle.
Right. But the oddest thing was inside the vehicle, first thing she noticed is that it reeked of smoke, which surprised her right away. And the ashtray was open and it was just packed of cigarette butts, packed. She counted them. There were 55 cigarette butts. Neil didn't smoke. Neil wouldn't allow people to smoke in his truck. So what the hell?
That's more than 2 packs of cigarettes.
Yeah.
So who was smoking them? And obviously they were being smoked when he wasn't in the truck, right?
Or in the truck incapacitated.
And I'm a little bothered. I think I'm going to be the Simon Cowell this season because I'm getting really pissed off at the lack of policing. Like, come on. If this lady knows enough to take the cigarette butts
and put them in a newspaper.
How did they not?
What kind of training did Mary Ellen have at the age of
She
40?
knew. She knew better. And she kept them. It's just appalling. And I'm just, with all the cases that we've done thus far, I'm getting pretty disappointed in the lack of, I don't know if it's interest at the beginning, but, it's just hurtful because I can't believe, and I'm sure if it was one of their loved ones, they'd be all over it. I don't know. It pisses me off.
You hear that a lot about missing persons cases back in those days was, you can't report the missing until they've been missing for at least 2 days. And maybe that's where that comes from, that the police didn't actually accept the missing report until two days after the person is missing.
I also think gender and
they
age,
always brushed it off back
but gender
then.
and age have a lot to do with it too. If it was a woman missing and she was younger, if it was a woman in general. But I think a man age 40 and he's gone out to the bar potentially that night, they don't take it seriously. They could have thought he ran off, he's drunk somewhere, he's on a bender, he's having an affair, who knows? who knows what they fluffed
Yeah,
it
but
off to be.
For them not to take the cigarette butts and her take them, they had opportunity the next day, the next day, the next day. They still
To take
didn't
the truck
clue in to say,
to
hey,
take the truck.
yeah, well, that's
The
it.
truck sat there.
The butts, the truck.
Yeah.
Well, and as far as we know, and there has been some, it's kind of like conflicting stories, because what we've heard is that the police never looked at Neil's truck. Mary Ellen eventually sold it. It would be wonderful to be able to track that truck down. But somewhere, somebody did report that the police looked at it. And of course, we're not privy to police reports. Basically, our main source of information is Mary Ellen, and she seems to have a pretty darn good recollection of everything that went down.
Mary Ellen's very with it, and she's been so active in Neil's case from day one. She hasn't stopped. So
yeah, amazing, wonderful lady. I like her.
I think it's such a trauma. She's in love. This guy has gone missing. She knows it's not like him. That everything from then on is just stuck, and you'd be picking up everything. Right? Yeah, it would be fresh all the time because you didn't get past it. So I think she knows it. She's got it all.
Yeah,
I hate hearing how distraught she even sounds when she's talking about how she got the runaround. Like, I just imagine myself in that situation. And if suddenly tomorrow, my hubby was gone or one of my kids were gone and I went to the police station and, well, you can't report him here because you're in this jurisdiction. Well, how about you go here? And you go here and they say, well, how about you go here? Like, seriously, somebody just take my goddamn report. Sorry for using the Lord's name in vain, but it's very frustrating to hear that ever even happens. It really is. The poor woman,
Well, a lot of people do pass the buck. That's a lot of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why not pass it off to this person or this detachment? Well, buck up and take it. I'll take you over there. Let's go together. I know you're hurting.
Was there some kind of reason why they were passing the buck? And those are things that we hope to be looking at in this series.
Absolutely.
On Friday, October the 11th. Yeah, it was Friday, October the 11th. Neil came home for supper. And after supper, he said he was going to Ayton because he wanted to go and see his coworker. He wanted to see about Neil had thousands of dollars invested in Ponzi scheme. And so did Neil's brother. And so Neil and his brother both wanted out. They wanted their money back. So Neil went to Ayton that night to contact to see about getting his money back. And anyway, it ended up that Neil never came home that night. So the next morning, Neil, he has a garbage business of his own. And he does the private customers Saturday morning about 5 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, I was worried about him not being home to pick up the garbage and and about his mother finding out that he never came home that night. This is totally, Neil never, that's just not Neil not coming home.
First of all, how nice is it that Mary Ellen's thinking of his mother?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't want to make her upset until she knows for sure if he is missing. But because he is so accurate and he's so loyal, he would be there doing the garbage because that's who he was. So all his customers knew, hey, he's not here. And they did contact his mom because they know that's not like Neil. So they were worried maybe that something happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sick.
I know you know your husband so well. And I don't think he drank very much. I think he was a very, very casual drinker. So for him not to show up and do his work, she knew right away that something was wrong. But this Ponzi scheme she talks about, so we know what those are, like a pyramid scheme. Yeah. So those are just crafty buggers that get you drawn in and you're promised you're going to make all this money if you bring so-and-so in and so-and-so in. And obviously it wasn't working. And Neil thought he'd been had and he wanted his money back. So he's on a mission to get to town to go and talk to this guy that he works with about getting his money back. Him and his brother, they want their money back.
Mm-hmm.
So
And think about it, thousands of dollars back then. That's a lot of money.
it's a lot of money now.
So, yeah, well, it's a lot of money, but back
for
then.
real. Yeah.
So he was thinking we could use that. Obviously, he's got now 2 kids that he wants to adopt, and just wanted to confront him and say, "Hey, where's my money?"
So this guy that he was going to see, that he worked with, he was also a friend of his. I think he was more than just a coworker. I believe it was a good friend of his as well, right?
Yes. Yep. From what we know, he was a friend, and his brother obviously believed in this Ponzi scheme. I don't know if they referred to it back then. They probably thought it was a get rich quick thing, but so his brother would also be maybe looking for his money also. So if this person had to pay 2 people, maybe $5,000, that's a lot of money to come up with. Pay these people out if that's the issue.
Yeah, you never know what happened, eh?
Mary Ellen believes she knows who murdered her husband, and she has never given up hope that they will be brought to justice and lead her to Neil's remains. In 2007, police reopened the investigation and called Neil's death a homicide. Mary Ellen had begun working with a psychic detective on her own and remained very active in her efforts to locate her husband. She was credited by police for awakening the investigation. Police believed they knew what happened to Neil and were desperate for someone to finally come forward and talk about what they would only describe as an event, attended by many people after bar closing time the night Neil disappeared. Unfortunately, they felt that describing this event more clearly could discourage people from coming forward with information.
July 2016, police announced a $50,000 reward to help solve the mystery. The money will be paid for information leading to an arrest or conviction of the person or people responsible for the disappearance of Neil McDOUGALL of Durham, who is presumed dead. The OPP announced the reward, which was offered by the Ontario government to coincide with Ayton's homecoming event in 2016. With lots of people returning home, police thought it would be the perfect time to announce a reward with posters in and around Ayton to advertise it.
The police investigation remains open, involving the West Grey Police Service, Grey County OPP, and the OPP Western Region Criminal Investigation Branch, under the direction of Detective Inspector Andy Raffay. Like we've always said, someone could possibly unknowingly or knowingly hold a key piece of information. It seems more likely the latter. With a population of under 200 people, somebody knows something. Are some of the residents of this little village covering for someone? Was it an accident that they panicked and they got rid of his body? Who's been holding on to this for 35 years? It's high time for answers. I think it's time to shake things up in this little town of Ayton. It's been way too long. Newspaper articles aren't cutting it. People have stopped talking, and we need it to start happening again. We need to put the heat on. We know somebody knows something. We know somebody knows something.
And 200 people?
Sure do.
200 people?
Mary Ellen and her family deserve answers, and the community deserve answers. There was probably, like, would you say, Candy, what is there, like 187 people in Ayton?
Yeah, it's a small place, and someone does know, like you said, someone does know something, and it's time to bring this to closure for yourselves, for Mary Ellen, for the community. It just has to be out there. 200 people, less than 200 people.
If there was an event that night that they talk about, then half the town could have been there. So
that's right.
The disturbing part is that police wouldn't actually announce what that event was. I'm pretty sure that every resident there would know what the event was. So we just need to do a little bit more digging.
So reach out to us, or please bring me home And you can do so absolutely anonymously, if that's your preference. We can be reached at 437-374-3030. You can call or text that number. Our email is sheddinglightpodcast@gmail.com. Please Bring Me Home can be reached at their website, pleasebringmehome.com, or you can reach them at their anonymous tip hotline, 1-226-702-2728. We really hope and pray that we hear from you.
Amen.
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 Oh yeah, everybody knew Neil
Yeah.
when we were kids.
What was Neil like?
Very quiet person. Didn't have a temper, and he would give you the shirt off his back if he could. Yeah, he wasn't a fighter, but he was very friendly. He didn't have a problem with anyone. Like I said, he was a very nice guy. He always talked to us when we were all out or whatever, and nobody had a problem with Neil. He was very quiet, and like I said, he wasn't a big drinker.
Join us for episode 2 as we speak to the wonderful folks of Ayton and area and track down the people that claim to have last seen Neil.
And you're phoning about Neil McDOUGALL, am I correct? Okay. That's funny, that you phoned because somebody asked me yesterday. They said, haven't they got a hold of you yet? Oh, the night he disappeared. He wasn't actually there that long when he came back, and I had been sitting there, and I offered him a ride home. He said, I'm fine. And I watched him. His truck was parked across the road. I watched him get into it to make sure that he was, fine to drive, and he didn't have a problem. He got in the car and he drove down to the first corner, and then he turned to the right. I can remember it as clear as can be, him getting into the truck.
The phone